Hi everyone, and welcome to the Ladder of Prejudice flip lesson. This is part of our History and Literature unit, and our anchor text for this is The Memoir Night by Elie Wiesel. Elie Wiesel is a survivor of concentration camps during World War II. Many people were murdered and exterminated by the Nazis and his Gestapo, Hitler's Gestapo, for many reasons. Over 12 million people were exterminated, and over half of them were Jews, targeted simply because of their religion. The rest of the people were political rivals, homosexuals, gypsies, mentally ill people, handicapped people, anyone that he felt was in his way or had power and money that didn't cooperate. It was quite a horrific war, not just the battle, but the extermination. And all of this started through the Ladder of Prejudice. So I know you've just begun it, but it's really important to see how a group of people or a society can watch such horrific events happen right under their noses and be silent and just watch it happen. How does that level of fear and hatred and indifference, which is what really bothered Elie Wiesel the most, was the incredible indifference of how people just were silent while the tormentors and oppressors murdered their neighbors and their friends. So let's take a look at the Ladder of Prejudice, and you'll have a worksheet in Teams that will help you with this when we're done. Okay. So the ladder has 5 rungs or 5 steps, and we start a ladder at the bottom, and the bottom is stereotyping. I'm going to scoot myself up here so I'm out of the way. So prejudice. Stereotyping begins with prejudice. Prejudice first manifests itself through talking about or making fun of a group of people. If we were in class, I would use as an example the green shirt kids, right? You know, all those kids that wear the green shirt, they eat different food and they speak a different language, or they cut their hair a different way, something that people would make fun of. Maybe they all wear green shirts and we're making fun of them. Something that makes them a little different. That's how it starts, something like that. The next step up the ladder involves avoiding the green shirts or that group of people that have been stereotyped. Avoiding them means there's no more contact. And once you have a lack of contact with people that are different than you, you become very ignorant about them. It's easy to start spreading rumors and talking, saying all kinds of things that are untrue. And that's where it starts to really manifest itself, the prejudice and the stereotyping and the avoidance. And that leads to discrimination. Because when you have a whole society who stereotyped and avoided the green shirt people or other people, now they're denied jobs and they're segregated. They have their own neighborhood, call it whatever you want to call it, but that's segregation. And one of the first things the Nazis did to Elie Wiesel and the Jewish population in his town in Singit in Romania was put them in a ghetto where they were fenced in a certain neighborhood area, and there was a curfew. They couldn't leave. No one could come in. They ate, drank, whatever they were told to. The supplies were limited. They couldn't meet in groups. They couldn't worship together. Complete control, complete discrimination, and people were silent. Neighbors that had been their neighbors forever were silent because of the ladder, because of the slow buildup of stereotyping and avoidance and discrimination. And after discrimination comes physical attack. I'm going to move myself over here. People who are discriminated against are often the victims of physical attack. It's very frightening. Very frightening. The attacks usually are an expression of anger and resentment that have built up through the first steps of prejudice of the ladder. They don't just come out of nowhere. They start with stereotyping and avoidance and discrimination, and then we have the physical attack. That's why it's called the Ladder of Prejudice. Stereotyping is dangerous because it's the first step. You want to be careful. You want to stop it when you see it. You don't want to be silent. And one of the things that really broke Eli and his family was the silence and indifference of the neighbors that they lived with. The next step is extermination. Sometimes physical attacks against a group of people turn deadly. And that's what happened in the concentration camps. They were no longer human. They were dehumanized, rounding up the Jews and putting them in cattle cars on a train. You put people on a train on cattle cars, they're not people anymore. And once you dehumanize someone, you can do anything you want. That's the final step in the ladder of prejudice. It's been present in society since the earliest days. It's happened in almost every country. It's probably happening somewhere right now. Because for political reasons and religious reasons or economic reasons, there's always stereotyping, avoidance, discrimination, physical attack, and extermination. And reading this memoir is really important for students. Number one, because you are going to learn about World War II in the spring, because that's your unit, moving in there. And second of all, so that you're not indifferent when you see it. When you see stereotyping or discrimination, you're not silent. You're not indifferent. Can't be. Can't be. This is the most current map tracking hate groups across the United States. I got this from the Southern Poverty Law Center this month. This is the most current map. Now, these hate groups, they're not just hate groups that meet. Some groups, may meet and train, almost like militia groups that are running around with the big guns. But these are groups that run internet hate groups. They publish, online articles, journals, newsletters. That it could be hate of anything, but mostly has to do with stereotyping. It starts there, and it just sadly it just blooms. It spreads. Oh, disappointing. One of the things I hope you get from this literature is that indifference is dangerous, prejudice is dangerous, discrimination is very dangerous, and always speak up against it. And you can see by this quote, this is when he was in the camps and he felt like a walking shell. He had no soul. He would look at himself in the reflection in the water and see a dead man. And he said, "For God's sake, where is God?" He's hanging from the gallows. Because people want to believe that God's protecting them, and they pray and they don't want want to believe that they're alone. And they felt alone. He felt like he was abandoned by God. And that's a big deal for someone who was so pious and so religious and felt that God was number one in his life. So it's an important book, and I'm glad we're reading it. So this is a Ladder of Prejudice. You have a little worksheet where you get to copy it down. It'll help you remember it. It will be landing in Teams. And that's your lesson. So please go into Teams now and take a look at that worksheet. And I will see you next class where we will go over the worksheet and talk a little bit about night and what you think of the Ladder of Prejudice. All right, until next time. See you later.